Hi, you're with Bear Friday, Body Language, and today we're looking at George Groves and Chris Eubank head to head. We're going to follow the Groves-Eubank fight to its conclusion. I'm fairly familiar with both boxers, followed both of their careers, and what we're looking for, well, just like any other head to head, it's just an exciting opportunity to see the interplay between the two boxers. Obviously George Groves, we know, has got history with pre-fight mind games. He likes to give a bit of needle, he likes to get under the skin of his opponent. This is probably my most favourite George Groves moment ever.
Would you like to shake my hand?
I'd love to shake your hand.
You'd love to?
You see that cheeky smile as he stands up. We're not going to go in heavy detail about Froch Groves. We're going to try and keep this whole video brief. But I just wanted to say you can see his cheeky smile because he knows what he's about to do. For once, Carl Froch has opened the door to George Groves, let his guard down inadvertently, made a mistake, and George Groves can instigate the needle. And this is the important thing. It's not how it finishes in this little confrontation they have. It's who gets to wind who up, who gets in whose head. And George Groves loves to get inside the head of his opponent, to make his opponent annoyed, to irritate them.
Would you like to shake my hand?
I'd love to shake your hand.
You'd love to? It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, pleasure to you too, mate.
What are you doing? We can all pull about a little bit. So I pull about, have a little pull and a push.
We can all pull about a bit, have a little pull and a push. I love that. But look, you see how this finishes with George Groves happy, stood over Carl Froch. His shoulders are slightly slumped. He had to take a slightly more submissive position. He got pulled around, but he won that little mind game. He got into Carl Froch's head. He made Carl Froch react in an uncontrolled, emotional way. George Groves was in control. So let's have a look at this Chris Eubank head to head.
Oh, no, you know what it's like. Shane? Yeah, I'll take it down. Best of luck. You're going to need it, boy. Now listen, good fight. All matters, mate. Right, ready?
So a lot of nice handshakes, and in the background you can hear someone talking. Good fight is all that matters. There's a lot of sportsmanship, and it looks like everyone's on a similar sort of level. They're not going to be aggro and butting heads. They're sportsmen, and they're all smiles and shaking hands.
No disrespect, lads, you know that. Go on.
There he goes, no disrespect, you know that, lads, in the background there. So it's almost a pre-arranged platform that they're not going to do all this silliness before this fight. They're going to behave in a sportsmanlike way. And you can see George Groves there. He's got this stare on, and he's working in his mind now. His mind is working. You know, he's completely in that mental space. You can see him picking his thumb there as well. Like, there's obviously a little bit of tension, and he wants to get into this needle and this winding up his opponent. He wants to get into the mind games. That's part of it for George Groves. It's something he really enjoys. But there's already this sort of unwritten ground rule that we're going to behave gentlemanly and sportsmanlike, and this photo opportunity is not the time and place to be doing it.
Go on, there's three of us.
George Groves taking a look at Chris Eubank over here. So George Groves is thinking, how am I going to get into this guy's head? What am I going to do now? Maybe he had a plan, a strategy, something he was going to say. Maybe that laying out of the groundwork, the shaking hands, the smiles, the no disrespect here has thrown him off his plan slightly. Chris Eubank is exhibiting all the standard body language that he's practiced in, of confidence, coolness, relaxed. He's doing it because he feels that, but also because it helps him to feel that. And he's not even looking at George Groves. Chris Eubank already knows what he's going to be doing in these situations. The same thing he's done every time, and the same thing he'll continue to do, which is just be confident in himself and not even think about the opponent. In fact, he likes to stand in front and have the opponent look at him. That's probably a strong position to be in. Did a little neck crick, he's just relaxing himself into it. George Groves here is eyeing up his man. A little clasp of the hands there, George Groves. Is that nerves Maybe it's just he's holding back from what he wants to actually do. He's, again, tempered by this call for respect. So he's thinking it through in his mind, holding his hands. Allowing himself to be distracted by other things, kind of showing Chris Eubank that he's not looking at Chris Eubank, even though he is. Chris Eubank staring straight ahead, but using his periphery vision to take in whether George Groves is eyeing him up or not. You can see a little look from Chris Eubank there, looking down and to his left to see if George Groves is taking this bait, is, eyeing him up, and if his cool, calm persona is working. And George Groves unashamedly looking over at Chris Eubank at the same time, for a very similar reason. Chris Eubank steps in towards George Groves there in a deliberate move to move his body into the space of George Groves. George Groves sees it happening. So at the moment they're almost stalemate, but Chris Eubank wants to step forward into that position. He wants to take over. And George Groves, a little shuffle towards Chris Eubank. I don't know if that's subconscious or conscious, but George Groves will not allow that encroachment into the space. He cannot hold back from pushing his foot forward as well. He's happy to meet Chris Eubank head on. And a big step from George here. Maybe the subconscious foot movement was his natural subconscious, and he's thought it through and thinks, yes, I am happy to meet this guy head on. And he's followed through with a big, bold body language action, which Chris Eubank matches. Turning face to face, Chris Eubank hardly wants to turn away from the cameras, and there's two reasons for that. One, it means he's going to have to now face his opponent, and part of his mind game is to not even look at his opponent, to be aloof and above it. And the other thing is that Chris does quite like having his photograph taken, and is pulling a face for the cameras. And this is really interesting. The first look, Chris Eubank looking down, and George Groves is expecting to see Eubank looking straight at him. Is that telling? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think Chris Eubank plans his eye contact. He immediately looks down, not subconsciously in submission, but because he's about to raise his eyes, and he wants his opponent to have to wait for him. But when he does, and we'll just chuck this back a little bit, Groves steps in even closer. And maybe it's a bit of a surprise to Eubank that Groves is this close. And he slightly leans back, Chris Eubank. There's a slight leaning back. Maybe it's just because he can't focus at this close range. Maybe he does feel a little bit intimidated. George Groves is obviously the bigger man. When someone gets this close to you, it is a natural reaction just to slightly move back. It's so ingrained in you to have a set personal space, boundary and zone. But these guys are so used to doing these sort of eye-to-eyes that once they've entered into that zone, it quickly becomes comfortable and they can stay there for a long time. And the more they're staying there, the more confident Chris Eubank is becoming. He's actually enjoying this. And a step away. As they step away, you can see Chris Eubank looks down slightly towards George Groves. Maybe that is a submissive action. But he hides a cheeky smile by looking down here. So that's also hiding his enjoyment of this whole situation. This smile, this confidence. Maybe he doesn't want to provoke George Groves by smiling directly at him. But inside, he's quite happy.
I smelt the fear.
Ah, so that's what the smile was about. He's about to say something. Let's rewind that.
I smelt the fear. I smelt the fear.
Very interesting. When he says that, he's looking down. His father comes to place a hand on his shoulder. It's an expression of almost surprise from Chris Eubank, as if he's surprised he's saying this. This is something they've prepared, this is a strategy, but instead of being able to deliver that line straight to camera, I smelt the fear, He's having to sort of perform. His dad's got his hand on his shoulder, supporting him in this action. And it's like almost a nervous, breathy statement. And considering they've all said, we're going to be respectful, we're not going to do this, it's quite a cheeky thing to do. A sort of thing George Groves might do. George Groves has already settled into the idea that it's going to be strong, silent, mean looks to camera, and he's not going to get his opportunity to really start on the verbal mind games. But Chris Eubank. Poor Chris Eubank. I'm going to just rewind that because it does look a little bit like George Groves has got his wanger out there, but I can promise you that's not his wanger, that's just his hand. But poor Chris Eubank is having to deliver this line, and he can't even believe he's doing it. And he's looking up now, smiling. It's like a cheeky boy at school who said something from the back of the room when the teacher's not looking. And he's settling into that. George Groves didn't react, so now he can raise his head and repeat it. And George Groves is even more surprised than Eubank. Look at him, he knows he's going to have to needle back now, but he didn't expect Eubank to be the one instigating that. Was there a comeback from George Groves?
I smelt the fear. Stinks of fear up here.
Yeah, he said something there. They always smell something, and turned to face Kelly Sowland when he said it. So that was quite dismissive of Eubank. He didn't think of anything mean or too quick-witted to say, but it was just dismissive. Oh, they always said, like, he's another talker. And he's looking at Callie when he says it, because Callie is the head honcho, isn't he? He's the has the highest social rank in this situation, being the promoter, organiser.
I smelt the fear. Stinks of fear up here.
So George Groves says it across to Calais, as if, like, you know, we're mates, we're the big guys, that means nothing to me. Dismissive. And he's got a little smile on his face as well, because he knows that this is going to break out into one of those verbal needle sort of affairs in the lead up to the fight. It's what he wanted in the first place. He's surprised that it was Eubank who brought it when they said they were just going to be respectful. But now they're both having a chance to take that in, and Eubank has got this smile of satisfaction because he knows he's taken the lead, he's put the first foot in. He's done exactly what Groves likes to do, and irritate the other guy. And Groves is starting to realise that he has kind of visibly come off second best in that small verbal exchange. He's thinking, Eubank looked better than me there.
Okay. Okay, George.
And now he's thinking, I'm going to get him next time. No eye contact between the guys. This is the first sort of verbal exchange, early doors. This is laying down a marker for both of them. Neither of them have taken a back step. They've both matched each other in terms of body language and verbals, and they don't want to push this any further than that. They're just both happy they've got through round one, in inverted commas, without losing too much face, setting up the next press conference. And it's George who turns away. He's fed up with this now. He is ready to move on. Chris Eubank, it's a telling little photo, isn't it? He's looking quite confident over his shoulder there. But to his credit, Groves does look back. And it's really, really interesting stuff. To his credit, Groves does look back to check what Chris Eubank's doing. He masks it by looking at Kelly Sowland, but actually, you know, he's checking out Chris Eubank. And Chris Eubank immediately drops his head. He doesn't want Groves to see that confidence. And it's almost schoolboy behaviour, isn't it? It's like when the teacher turns around, you hide back down behind the desk. And then when he looks at the blackboard, you're up again with your funny antics. And then he turns around, you hide behind the desk. It's a process of irritating George Groves, isn't it? And in this situation, Groves is the older boxer. Maybe the shoe's on the other foot here for once. It's going to be interesting to see how the mind games play out, because George Groves is usually the one doing the irritating, And it looks like Chris Eubank is able to play those cards as well. And he looks away, he is irritated here. He's going for his jacket. Loosen it up. Show that you loosen your jacket, but secretly fucking irritated by that Chris Eubank fella. And he's getting his belt out now. Status. He's not physically wearing the belt, but he's drawing attention to the fact that he has one. Doing a bit of peacocking in front of Chris Eubank, who's turned away now and is doing his tried and tested tactic of, I don't even care what you're doing, I'm just getting on with my own thing. Groves won't leave until he's sure that he's dominated the space. But yeah, he's happy with that at the end. He looks to his trainers. And gives a sort of, yeah, that went alright. So he thinks he pulled it back at the end of that by dominating the space and by having Chris Eubank duck when he looked back. But it's all playing out very nicely, very interesting. I said this was going to be short and it's turned into a long one, hasn't it? One thing I do want to say is that if you're looking at these body language analysis of press conferences, head-to-heads, with a view to guessing who's going to win, with a view to knowing who's going to win the fight, then maybe you're on the wrong track, because you can learn a lot from body language pre-fight, but when you get in the ring, no amount of mind games or body language can save you if you get hit cleanly on the jaw. So yes, it plays a massive part in boxing. Yes, it's a very interesting part of boxing. And yes, it can sometimes make a big difference in the result of a fight. But I'm not going to pretend that watching the body language of two men or women squaring up to each other, playing mind games, strategizing, is going to enable me to predict the future when it comes to sporting events. But I hope you found it really interesting. If you like the content, click like and subscribe. Leave a comment. I won't reply to any of them.